I am Johnny Massacre and welcome to my world. Are you feeling like the world is doomed lately, and no matter what you do and who you vote for, censorship, mass illegal migration, and inflation seem inevitable? Well, if you're feeling like that, I can explain why. Who is with me? Give me a hell yeah! So, I was seeing people on X saying how they're exasperated. They feel like giving up. They're asking other people if they feel like the world is kind of doomed and there's no future for our children and everything looks bleak and we're far less free today in 2024 than we were in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Mass migration in every single major Western European country and in America. Even on the left, people don't vote for it. Even though it's illegal, governments are funding it. And it's as if we can't stop it. Against the backdrop of inflation, where older people are going hungry and can't have the heating in winter, when at the same time, taxpayer funds are going to house and feed and educate and give healthcare to illegal migrants. And if you dare to even notice what's happening, you can be arrested for hate speech in the United Kingdom, in Brazil, in places like this. Do you feel like no matter what we do, by small degrees, we are going off a cultural cliff, an economic cliff, and there is no way back? Well, if you feel like that, you're not alone, because I feel like that too. And I can tell you why that it is happening. So the reason why this is happening, even though a lot of people didn't vote for it, is because there are large organizations who are run by activists who are funding this. They are funding globalism, they are funding leftism. Essentially, they are trying to bring about socialism in the West. Now, probably the biggest and most famous organization who is funding this kind of stuff, who's funding mass migration, who is funding refugees, who is funding censorship, who is funding hate speech laws and all of these things, is the Open Society Foundation. It is run by George Soros. You often hear people who might be accused of having a tinfoil hat, of blaming everything on George Soros. But the fact is that when they tell you who they are, you should believe them. It's all out there in the open. Here is the Open Society Foundation on Google. If you look it up, it says that Open Society Foundations work with organizations and individuals who seek to address profound racial, economic, and political inequalities while funding efforts to prepare for the policy challenges of the future. So what that means is they fund economic migrants. They give advice to economic migrants. They're behind the NGOs who give bank accounts to economic migrants. They fund the NGOs who give plane tickets and train tickets to economic migrants. They fund the NGOs who fund the migrant centers all over Europe and in Ireland and stuff like that. These people have billions, trillions of dollars, and they're giving it to all of these NGOs who put it into all of the things that are messing up the world today, in my opinion. Open Society Foundation is at the head of this, and it's run by George Soros. So you can see, if you Google it, their own website says that Open Society Foundations work to build vibrant and inclusive democracies. So that means mass migration and refugees. On Google, it says, Open Society Foundations, formerly the Open Society Institute, is a US-based grant-making network funded by business magnate George Soros. Open Society Foundations financially supports civil society groups around the world with the aim of advancing justice. So justice, you often hear this with social justice. That means socialism. That means people who don't have things, it's because of oppression, and we need to take things away from productive people and wealthy people and give it to poorer people. These are the people who support mass migration to your country and fund it. So if we go onto the Open Society Foundation's website, go on there yourself. It is just article after article after article about how we need refugees. And you know, if you question this, you'll be censored by your respective government, especially if you're from the UK. For example, on the Open Society website, the first article I found is called Refugee Leadership, Rising from the Ashes of Adversity. A UN advocate for refugee rights is forced by violence to seek refuge herself. How that experience helped build a vibrant global refugee group. Does that sound familiar? In Ireland, there's huge refugee camps being erected, migrants being shipped into towns where they outnumber the actual townspeople there. Open Society Foundation and other organizations that give out grants that are run by activist billionaires are funding the downfall of the West, are funding mass migration, are funding censorship for anyone who questions it, are funding this whole misinformation narrative where if you question what they're trying to do, you end up being censored or penalized or even end up in jail, as is in the case of the UK. On the Open Society Foundation website, the next article says, "Cry, scream, but be strong. Stories of Afghans in exile." So puff pieces about Afghanis. You can look this up right now on the UK Gov website. They took in 30,000 Afghani refugees, gave them funding, gave them food, gave them clothing, gave them education. And you have people like the Open Society Foundation funding it and supporting it. Other articles on their website, literally the first articles I've found, I didn't even have to dig for this, include "A Nation of Immigrants, What the US Still Owes Undocumented Workers." So there's article after article like this. "Power for the refugees. Empowered refugees lead the way. The best way to support and empower refugees in a time of crisis is to recognize that they know best how to address the needs of their communities." You just saw 1 million people who were removed from voter rolls in Texas who shouldn't have been on those voter rolls. You've seen Kamala Harris saying she wants to give green cards to all the immigrants and refugees in the United States of America. If you import these people, you import the voter base. It's another reason these people support refugees, because it means that the refugees are going to vote for them. That's what the Open Society Foundation is funding. And you can find all of these articles on their website. The next one, "Forging a bond between locals and refugees. The Greek island of Lesbos remains at the front lines of refugee arrivals to Europe. Currently, more than 21,000 refugees are held there. A grassroots group called the Starfish Foundation is working to improve the lives of locals and refugees. Billions and billions of dollars being given to a corrupt minority who will support, house, feed, and distribute refugees all throughout the West who will vote for globalist governments." That is what is going on. If you're wondering why everything seems terrible right now, I have the answer for you. So I went onto the Open Society Foundation's website and looked at the list of grants that they gave out. 2024 isn't available yet, but 2023 is available, and the list is massive. I couldn't even get through A. So many grants were giving out to organizations, groups, and committees who are funding illegal migrants. But not only that, funding any communist activity that will subvert the West, the LGBTQ mafia, the BLM resistance, all of this kind of stuff, socialism, Palestine, kefirs on campus, millions, billions of dollars being given to these groups. Why do you think this is all you see in the mainstream media? Because the mainstream media also paid off by these people, and billions of dollars, trillions are trickling through society and going to all of these woke causes. If you are a wealthy activist, you don't have to get involved in doing it all yourself. That's not how the crime boss works. He will delegate tasks to his underlings. So all you need to do is pour billions, trillions of dollars into woke causes. And surprise, surprise, you will see a lot of woke causes cropping up absolutely everywhere. So I went onto the Open Society Foundation and I went onto the first grant I could find. What are the chances that the first grant I could find would lead me down a rabbit hole of socialism, anarchism, the downfall of capitalism, like Palestine on campus groups, BLM groups, Queers for Palestine groups? That is the first donation I could find on the Open Society Foundation website of thousands of other donations. And these are only the ones we know about. And this is not even taking into account the other grant awarding organizations who are doing exactly the same thing all over the world, and all the thousands of NGOs funded by your tax money who are all putting money into the same woke causes that are making you feel like we're doomed, like there's no hope for our children, like we're never going to get our free speech back, like socialism is going to come no matter what we do. Let me show you what I found on the Open Society Foundation website, the first grant I looked into. So I opened the website and this caught my eye. Absurd Intelligence Limited. I already knew that this was going to be a piece in the puzzle showing us why we're absolutely screwed today. The first donation they made, $300,000. Who got $300,000? Why is society so messed up and woke today? It's this guy, Charlie Waterhouse. So on his LinkedIn, he describes himself as narrative leadership in the face of climate and democratic collapse. So that's talking about anarchism, That's talking about the revolution. That's talking about destroying capitalism and instilling socialism. The first thing I could find on the biggest grant-giving organization website in the entire world. That's the first thing. Now imagine how many areas of society, media, sport, education, the judicial system are infected with this stuff. Because also, note, on the Open Society Foundation website, there's a whole section about judicial reform, and that's how they hire woke judges to change the law in their favor. So let's look into what the Open Society Foundation just gave $300,000 to. So this guy says he's the co-founder of Absurd Intelligence and the Brixton Design Trail. And on his page, he had a link to Extinction Rebellion UK, which he's a co-founder of. So $300,000 was given towards civil disobedience. They're funding civil disobedience. They're funding the Palestine protests on universities. So I went to the Instagram page of this organization that Charlie Waterhouse co-founded. The first thing I found was like pro-Palestine flag, climate vandalism flyer, straight up communism, like Queers for Palestine is insane because queer people get executed in Palestine, and all out against fascism advertisement that says bring banners, pots, pans, horns, anything to make noise with. These are the people who are essentially Antifa. So the biggest grant giving organization in the world is funding Antifa en masse. It's the first grant I found on its website with thousands of grants, and these are only the ones that we know about. The Instagram account of this guy who just got $300,000 from George Soros and the Open Society Foundations followed this account, Socialism Scotland. This is where the activists are giving the money. This is why society feels like it's in a Marxist grip. Trillions of dollars are going to these causes. The guy who got $300,000 also followed Edinburgh Trans Pride, and also followed Scotland for Sudan, and also follows Gaza Solidarity Camp Scotland. So I looked onto the accounts that the guy who got $300,000 followed and supports, and you have stuff like this. Comrades, let us know what type of Palestinian solidarity or action you'd like to see happening at the university. Comrades is a term used to speak to fellow communists and socialists. They are funding socialism. Here you can see in the universities. Another post on this Instagram account linked to this guy who got $300,000 from George Soros. Wear your keffiyeh on campus, or the colors of the Palestinian flag or some other Palestinian accessory or clothing. Crazy stuff. Socialist Scotland they're following, with a hammer and sickle in their logo. On Socialist Scotland's website, who this guy who got $300,000 from George Soros is following, you've got stuff like this: no pride in genocide. You've got no pride without some sort of liberation for all of us. This is talking about communist revolution. You've got like the raised communist fist with BLM, rainbow flag, all of this stuff. Other posts on this Instagram account, essentially funded by George Soros, is BIPOC Muslim people-centered event. Allies and activists are welcome to join. Group walk in the meadows. And then we've got Dear White People. We've got racist posts against white people. So if you're wondering why there's all this anti-white hatred, straight white male hatred, it is because there are socialist activists who are forcing through socialism under the thin veil of multiculturalism, immigration, and intersectional politics, which includes like minorities and sexual minorities and stuff like that. They use intersectional politics as a thin veil, as cover for what they're doing, because if you criticize them, they're going to call you racist, sexist, transphobe, or homophobe. That makes it impossible to be against socialism, because if you're against socialism, you're against the things they pretend they support, minorities, sexual minorities, and they're going to call you some kind of phobe. That's how it works. It's extremely powerful, and that's why you might feel like you're doomed recently, because I don't see any grant-giving organizations giving grants to anti-immigration or individualism or capitalist principles or small businesses and stuff like this. It's all going one way towards socialism, wokeism, and leftism. So I also found this on an Instagram account that the guy who got $300,000 from George Soros is following. It says, our enemy is capitalism, free Palestine. So you're going to use free Palestine as a front for agitating and bringing through communism. So this guy who got $300,000 from George Soros, once again, his name is Charlie Waterhouse. He created Absurd Intelligence, and he also created This Ain't Rock and Roll. It's his activist website. This is what he got $300,000 for. You got a picture of Donald Trump illustrated as Hitler with a barcode masquerading as the moustache. And you got a bunch of Free Palestine stuff and all kinds of Antifa agitating kind of stuff. Also on his website is a link to Foxglove. This is also where the funding goes from Open Society Foundation and other NGOs. Foxglove, they say, are what the future looks like, a female-led fuck this. This is why you might feel doomed. This is why feminism is everywhere. Intersectional politics is everywhere. Pro-migration is everywhere. Migration camps are everywhere. Because it's being funded by activist billionaires. The biggest grant-giving organization, Open Society Foundation, is funding this stuff. This is the first grant I opened out of thousands of grants, and they're all going towards the same thing. Here are some other grants. This one went to Action for Hope to promote the role of arts in achieving social change and addressing social justice issues. Arts. So you're wondering why art is fucked? Because people are being funded and given money to put communist socialist propaganda and social justice in their art. It's here on the Open Society Foundation website. And I might be getting a little bit heated about this. You can tell, you can hear the emotion in my voice because it's here out in the open. I feel like a crazy person screaming at the moon with a tinfoil hat. And I know people are going to call me a conspiracy theorist. It's a real conspiracy. It's here, available on the Open Society Foundation website. Why is nobody talking about this? If we don't know what's going on, how can we combat this kind of stuff? So they're essentially funding racism and prejudice. Another donation, the next one I looked at, Advanced Carolina, $1,125,000 to support the grantee's social welfare activities. Again, $1 million towards socialism. Next grant, $400,000 to Afghan Women's Parliamentarian and Leaders Network to support the grantee's work on leveraging Afghan women's voices. Do you know what that means? $400,000 are going to Afghani refugees who were brought into your country. Your tax money is going to support illegal immigrants. The next grant I found, American Committee on Middle Eastern Rights. So all of the refugees they bring in, they get more and more funding and they give it to the refugees and they give it to people managing the refugees. That's why you're seeing all the refugee propaganda everywhere. I could go on and on and on and on. So that took me about 10 minutes of research. I went on to Open Society Foundation. It's all there. It's absolutely all there. And that does not take into account all of the NGOs who are also pouring billions of dollars into these exact same causes. So that's why you might feel like you're doomed. Billions, trillions of dollars going towards these causes. Imagine how far that will go. You give $300,000 to that activist following all these socialist, like radical Antifa accounts. The money like flows through it all. They keep getting more and more donations. You keep getting more and more activists. You keep getting more and more refugees. You keep getting more and more bought out journalists. You keep getting more and more biased articles, Kotaku articles, Polygon articles. It isn't any wonder why things are the way that they are. And the crazy thing is the government funds the NGOs, so your tax money is being used against you in the propaganda war and to destroy your country and to push socialism and to push, refugee policies and to push giving green cards to refugees and to push like man-hating feminism in video games and movies. Speaking of which, do you know that video game called Dustborn? It's supposed to be the wokest game of all time. In the game, you cancel people and bully people and do shit like that. So apparently that was partly funded by EU grants. So the government is funding all of this socialist propaganda. This game is like a socialist wet dream. In this, you call each other comrades. They say capitalism's evil. They want to overthrow capitalism. Grums on X said, Dustborn used far more government money than has been previously reported. Norwegian Film Institute funded the game for 14 million kroner or nearly 1.4 million US dollars. This is in addition to 150,000 euros from the Creative EU grant program. These programs are the ones who are funded by Open Society Foundation and other grant-giving organizations and other NGOs. That's why everything seems like doom and gloom right now. So much money is going towards instilling socialism in the West. It is crazy. Grum says Dustborn is basically an Antifa training game. You bash the fash across the divided states of America by using vocal powers to call people racist. The game has 33 players currently on its opening week. And nobody wants this. And wherever it's instilled, it destroys everything. Wherever there's socialism, it's a parasite. It just takes away from productive things and destroys. And there's nothing left in the end. So that's why this Dustborn game, having been given grants by NGOs, probably by Open Society Foundation or something similar, is failing. Like, nobody actually wants this kind of stuff. And yet it got loads of money. Taxpayer money. So you can see here evidence of the grants that this game received, which is just insane. It's all available online if you want to find it yourself. And it wasn't just Norway and the EU that funded this kind of woke socialist game. It was also the US. So the US provided $275,000 for the funding of a new counter-disinformation game. You can see it here. Counter-disinformation, saying how you need to tear down capitalism. Billionaire, trillionaire activists like George Soros and their organizations handing out grants to all the woke leftist causes. You've got the NGOs putting billions of dollars in to like house migrants, help migrants, push this propaganda. You have the US government themselves funding this stuff, because anyone who agrees with socialism, anyone who agrees with loads of migrants coming into the country and housing them with taxpayer money, anyone who agrees having pride flags everywhere and judging people based on sex and gender and race, anyone who agrees with any of those principles, anyone who agrees with climate change is going to destroy the world in 5 years, they are going to vote for Lula. They are going to vote for Biden. They're going to vote for Kamala. They are going to vote for someone who's going to bring about socialism. They are funding socialist propaganda. Any of these topics is what leftists like. Intersectional politics, socialism, climate change, abortion. That's why the NGOs, the governments, with your tax money and these grant-giving organizations are pushing all of those topics, because anyone who agrees with it is going to vote for a prime minister or a president who's going to ram through socialism. So there you go. Go and research it yourself. Go to Open Society Foundation. Look at where their money is going. It's going all throughout society, local grassroots organizations. That first guy I showed you, he's doing events in Brixton. So like all the poor parts of London, socialists and Marxists gravitate towards there because they can brainwash people who don't have money, who are working class, into blaming the system, joining their cause, voting for leftists, and so they can get more funding to keep selling them this idea that the only reason that they're failing is not because they're not productive or lazy or not as intelligent as other people, but because someone stole shit from them. It's always these kind of working class communities. So I'm not surprised that the first guy I showed you, he received $300,000 from George Soros, is operating in and around Brixton, another area, Peckham in London, that has some quite good parties, but has a lot of kind of Marxist influence and like fucking like communist fist graffiti and stuff. That area has loads of these Marxists over there, these victimhood creating Marxists who get shitloads in funding and say, I'm going to help you, man. But really they're invested in your failure, because if you succeeded, they wouldn't have a job and wouldn't have any funding. So that's why everything feels like doom and gloom. Activist billionaires are funding this shit. And not only that, governments are funding this shit through proxies called NGOs. So luckily there's people like Elon Musk who are on the other side of the fence, who are pushing back against this stuff and actually doing something quite productive and making things and making infrastructure to try to push back against it. But really, I don't see any of these NGOs funding any kind of individualistic stuff, any like libertarian stuff, any classical liberal stuff. It just so goes that Marxism is an intellectual pathogen that's adopted by these intellectuals. However smart they may be or whatever their IQ may be, every human is susceptible to brainwashing, and it's always the intellectuals that push for socialism. And these motherfuckers are just attracting other like-minded people and only surround themselves with similar people, and they're infesting all levels of society. So share this video with people so people know what's going on. Reject socialism under the thin veil of like immigrant rights, refugee rights, the rainbow flag, the trans flag, the BLM bullshit, the pro-Palestine like communist fist. It's all a thin veil to cover up communism and socialism. It's just a way to bring about the destruction of society and bring about socialism. If you have billions of refugees, it will stress the system so much that people are not going to have any money anymore because they're going to be taxed so highly. All their money will go to supporting these people. And now you have socialism. Wealth has been distributed all throughout society. People who don't have money, they've got all the productive people's money. And then the productive people have less money because they've given it away. And then we're supposedly all the same. These destructive policies will ruin society. They'll bankrupt society. And once that happens, there is no way back. And the worst thing is they'll gaslight you and blame you. They'll call you a racist for questioning their policies. Don't you want to help the refugees? You're racist. They're going to blame it all on you. And they need there to be a crisis. They need there to be problems to raise your taxes, tax you up the arse, and redistribute it to people. So if you vote these people into power, you're just going to get more and more manufactured problems. You're going to get more and more COVID-19 crisis. You're going to get more fossil fuel, green energy, climate change crisis. You're going to get more refugee crisis. You're going to get more of these crises. And the only way to fix it is to give the government absolute power to micromanage it and spend money up the wazoo, which will make it worse and worse and worse until you've got no elbow room, no capital, no wealth at all. And you're just under the boot of these motherfuckers stamping down in your face forever. Call them out. Do not vote for these people. Do not vote Kamala Harris into power. Vote for someone like Donald Trump. He's totally against these policies. Support X. Get a premium subscription over there. Support this channel. Share information. Let people know what's going on. Get people aware. We'll stop this shit. So thank you very much today for joining me. I hope you're not too doom and gloom after that. I wanted to show you why you might feel like everything is doom and gloom at the moment. And once we know what is wrong with it, once we've diagnosed the problem, we can find a solution. So let's work together to put things right. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider donating. Streamlabs.com/Johnny Massacre, Patreon.com/Johnny Massacre, or PayPal.me/give me a hell yeah. I'm going to reset that bar. My dream of going to America, I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm going to change that goal. I need your support more than ever now. I'm in the red. Don't know how I'm going to pay the bills this month. Taxes are insane in Japan. And if I make these episodes, it has to be at the expense of a normal job. So in order to keep doing that, I really need your help. So if you can afford it, please consider donating today. The links are in the description box and to the right of my head. Thank you very much, everyone. Much love. Take care and see you tomorrow. Cheers.